Hello again, everybody. I'm Roger Hoover. Glad to welcome you back to the Crimson Tide Sports Network, and welcome to this week's episode of Crimson Drive presented by Coca-Cola, as it's a Tuesday edition when we always take a look back at the previous game, and that means we'll be recapping Alabama against Southern Miss, plus starting to look ahead to Saturday's contest against the Ole Miss Rebels. Our friends at RJ Young have supplied us with this smart board so we can go through the headlines for today, and RJ Young is the official technology solutions provider of Crimson Drive. First of all, on the show, as I mentioned, we'll take a look back at the Southern Miss game, and we will go back to the booth, and we'll take a look at all the booth cam highlights from really dominant performance. 63-14 was the final score, so all of the highlights with Eli Gold on the call coming up in just a moment. Then we'll hear from the head coach of the Crimson Tide, Nick Saban, as we'll hear Coach give his coach's checklist from his Monday press conference, really the three key things you need to know from what Coach Saban had to say yesterday. Somebody that knows Coach Saban really well is Chris Lowe of ESPN. He's been covering him for many years, and also was our special media guest last week on Hey Coach. So we'll hear about that coming up from Chris Lowe as well. And then two of our Alabama legends this week are really legendary figures in Crimson Tide history. Leroy Jordan along with Bill Battle, who was the athletic director here at Alabama before Greg Byrne. And we'll get to hear a part of our conversation that we had earlier in the summer from Bill Battle, talking about memories from the 1961 National Championship team that will be honored coming up this Saturday against Ole Miss. So I think you'll enjoy getting to hear from Coach Battle once again, as well as Chris Lowe. We'll have Coach's checklist and again our booth cam highlights as well. Taking a look at other headlines for the Crimson Tide football team. Of course, 63-14, such a strong win against Southern Miss on Saturday. Bryce Young, a really great performance. 20 of 22 passing. Hard to get more efficient than that. 313 yards, 5 touchdowns. Did throw his first interception of his career. Bryce Young said it was his fault. Coach Saban said it's not his fault. Maybe the truth is somewhere in the middle, but still a great performance by Bryce Young on Saturday. And then Jamison Williams, what can you say? 2 kickoff returns for a touchdown. That's never been done before in a game in Alabama history. Added a receiving touchdown as well. He was the SEC Special Teams Player of the Week, so great to see that honor for Jamison Williams, the Ohio State transfer, come in. And also, we know that coming up, College Station, Alabama against Texas A&M, set for under the lights, 7 p.m. Central on October 9th at Kyle Field. So the SEC announced that yesterday. So if you're making plans to go to College Station, know that it will be a night game coming up on October 9th. Some other teams with their seasons fully going on campus. The Alabama soccer team Sunday fell at Vanderbilt by a 3-0 final score. Vanderbilt, a team that won the SEC tournament a year ago, so one of the soccer powers in the league. And now another team that's been performing well this season, LSU, is on the schedule. The Tigers have been in the top 5 at different points this season. They're coming off 2 straight losses, so it will be Alabama against LSU coming up at 7 p.m. on Friday night on SEC Network Plus, as the Crimson Tide are 6-6 on the year, 1-2 in SEC play. The one win was last Thursday against Mizzou here in Tuscaloosa. Alabama volleyball team, speaking of LSU, they were just in Baton Rouge on Saturday, fell in a really thrilling match. 5 sets, could have gone either way, but LSU ends up getting the win in the 5th set, so a 3-2 victory for the Tigers in that matchup. Now Alabama has all week to prepare for what's going to be 2 matches against the Auburn Tigers, playing back-to-back on Saturday and Sunday. You can watch those matches on SEC Network Plus, as Lindsey Devine's team is 8-6 overall and then 0-2 in SEC play, and now they have, again, 2 matches coming up with the Auburn Tigers this weekend. Then some other headlines, a really great performance by the women's golf team in Nashville at the Mason Rudolph Invitational, finishing second. Bendetta Moresco, Polly Mack, great performances for the Crimson Tide women's golf team. If you are in the mood for baseball, just come on down to Sewell Thomas Stadium in the afternoon this week. Great weather in Tuscaloosa as Brad Bohannon's baseball team continues practicing. The women's tennis team, they had 5 wins Sunday at the Ole Miss Fall Invite, so great performance by Jenny Mine's team. And also, we do want to remind you once again, download your tickets and parking passes now for the Ole Miss game. That's something that was really helpful this past week against Southern Miss. Not nearly as long of ticket lines or anything like that. It's just everybody had their tickets ready to go, and that certainly made the difference for fans going to Bryant-Denny Stadium, having a great experience. For Alabama against Southern Miss, we want the same coming up when Alabama takes on Ole Miss coming up on Saturday at Bryant-Denny Stadium. I mentioned Alabama was home against Southern Miss this past week for the 4th game of the season, and we want to have you relive that moment when Alabama picked up the 63-14 win, as we'll take a look at our booth cam highlights of Alabama against Southern Miss from Saturday.
Three wides to the right, including Billingsley. One man, Mechie, wide to the left. Here's the snap to Bryce. He stands in, looks and throws towards the corner of the end zone. Touchdown, Alabama. Jaleel Billingsley, 15 yards into the corner of the end zone. That's 2 games in a row now that Billingsley has made an outstanding catch for a touchdown. Now quickly with Williams to the left side, Mechie to the right. Quarterback to the right rear of his quarterback. Here's a quick throw, screen. Mechie behind blocking, turns the corner. He's to the 15, stutter steps twice. He gets down to the goal line. He's out of bounds. Out of bounds at the 1. There you go. Touchdown, Cameron Latu. And for Latu, his 3rd touchdown of the year. 1st and 10, Alabama now. Here's the quarterback. Bryce loads up, looks long, has Jamison behind the defense. See ya! My goodness! 81 yards. That was quick. And for Alabama, painless. 81 yards. 2nd explosive play tonight involving Jamison Williams.
Did the first one on the special teams, 101-yard kickoff return. This time is man-to-man coverage from Southern Miss. He blows off the line of scrimmage. He puts his hand up in the air, Jamison does, as he's waving past the Southern Miss defender because he knows it's one-on-one. All Bryce has got to do is put enough air under the ball where he can run underneath it. Bryce throws a perfect ball right in stride, and then Williams does the rest. I mean, the separation that he got once he caught the ball till he broke the tape at the goal line was just speed to burn. Okay, so good job on 2nd down, get it back. We're going to be 3rd and 9. He practiced this all week. He practiced it all the time. Different stages in the red zone. So you get the high red about the 15 to the 25, and right here on the 9-yard line, this has got to be a throw. Bryce has got to understand the situation. We got 24 seconds left on the clock. So you don't want to force it, but you got to be aggressive trying to get a touchdown.
This is the 10th play of the drive for Alabama. Motion, Slade Bolden. He'll come to the right of the quarterback. Line up in the slot right. One wide out left. Running backers to the left side of Bryce. Bryce gets the snap. Stands in, looks right, looks left, looks up the middle. Unloads on the left side. Catch is made. Spinning around. Chase McClellan. Touchdown, Alabama, with 15 seconds to go in the half. 1st and 10. Alabama from the 11. Heading to our left. Here's the throw across the middle. Latu. Touchdown, Alabama. Here's the kick by Briggs Bourgeois. Taken by Jamison Williams on the run of the 20, 25, 30. He's got one man to beat. It's Bourgeois. He'll beat him down the near sideline. His 2nd kickoff return of the day. Touchdown, Alabama.
Have to run one more play right here. This will be the victory formation.
Yep.
Just run the clock out, but victory indeed. This is a good game from Alabama.
Remember, you can watch the booth cam for every Alabama football game presented by Royal Furniture on our Facebook page right here, so make sure you make that part of your game day tradition, watching the booth cam presented by Royal Furniture. So that was Saturday night at Bryant-Denny Stadium, Alabama picking up a dominant win against Southern Miss. Now it's starting time to be really focused on the Ole Miss Rebels, as yesterday head coach Nick Saban met with the media for his Monday press conference, taking a little bit of a look back at Southern Miss, but now also shifting that focus to what's coming up on Saturday against Ole Miss. Here's Coach's checklist from Monday.
Well, I was really pleased with the effort, the energy, the intensity that we played with in the game this past week. I think it was an improvement for our team. A lot of lessons still to be learned in terms of we did a lot of really good things in the game when we did things right, but there's still some things that we can definitely improve on. I think, penalties probably cost us 150 yards of field position if you take the penalty plus the gain, whether it was on special teams or offense or whatever. So these are things that we have to really understand the consequences of and continue to try to improve on. But, we made a lot of explosive plays on offense. Defense played pretty well for the most part. Saw some things that we hadn't really practiced, had to make a lot of adjustments in the game, so I thought the players did a pretty good job of that. You know, Ole Miss has an outstanding team. I think they've got like 17 starters back from a team that won 8 games last year. Lane does an outstanding job with their offense. Their overall team is improved in every category, defense, special teams. They really are playing extremely well. This is one of the best offensive teams in the country, no doubt. The quarterback is a fantastic player, understands the offense well, does a great job of executing it. They've got really good running backs. They've got lots of speed. They've got good receivers. The offensive line is returning intact. So a lot of really good players that are really well coached, and you know, their whole fastball system is something that's always a challenge for the defense to, you know, get lined up and play with great poise and be able to focus on, you know, doing your job. So it's a real challenge for us from that standpoint. You know, defensively, they're really improved from a year ago in their statistics and, you know, the way they played. You know, I think they got a little different system that they're playing, dropping a little bit more like Arkansas-like, with a little more 8 drops and playing a little more odd type stuff. So, and they have done it extremely well. And, you know, because they've got good team speed, they're good on special teams, they got a great punter. So, you know, this is a really good team overall, and going to be a real challenge for us come Saturday, but we're definitely looking forward to it. We're making progress as a team, and I think it's going to we need to continue to do that this week. Yeah, B-Rob's going to practice today, and, you know, hopefully, you know, we'll go day to day with him and see how he develops, but we're hopeful that he'll be, you know, 100% by game time.
That was yesterday, Coach Saban with Coach's Checklist as we get ready for Alabama against Ole Miss coming up on Saturday here in Tuscaloosa. Over the years, somebody that's covered Coach Saban very closely, and some of the more unique stories that have been written about Coach Saban have been done by Chris Lowe, who is a senior writer at ESPN. He's spent so many years, over 20, covering SEC football, and again, so many years covering Coach Saban. He really has a unique perspective on what makes Coach Saban tick, as well as Lane Kiffin, who he's covered closely as well. So we figured this was a good week to catch up with Chris Lowe, who we just saw in town as our special media guest on Hey Coach and the Nick Saban Show last Thursday night. But I think you'll enjoy this detailed conversation with Chris, talking about the 2 coaches that meet on Saturday, Lane Kiffin of Ole Miss, Nick Saban of Alabama. Chris, you were just with us last week for Hey Coach and the Nick Saban Show, and now we're glad to have you on again as we get ready for Alabama and Ole Miss. But how's everything going for you?
Going great. We're looking forward to getting into the teeth of the season.
We really are. And again, for you, last week you got to be here in Tuscaloosa and go on Coach Saban's radio show. Just what do you like when you get to have those moments with Coach Saban? A lot of times as well, kind of off air and just talking football with Coach.
You know what's pretty cool about his show is, you know, having done it now several times, he actually brings notes into his show. It's not like he just shows up. It's like everything he does in life. He's prepared. He's got notes. He's got points. And you'll see him looking down. He's got a little note card right beside him. You know, points or notes or nuggets he wants to offer the fans or what have you. It's like he's talking to his team. But that's sort of who he is. I mean, there's nothing he does that's not planned or thought out, or he's never going into any venture. Heck, doing commercials. I know for a fact, and talking to some of those people who produced them, that when he does a commercial, I mean, he's ready. He wants to know the background. He wants to be prepared to make sure he does it exactly the way it's supposed to be done.
You think he enjoys moments as well where he is able to show off his personality a little bit more than what maybe fans get to see when he's dealing with the media in press conferences or different interviews like that? He's got to love opportunities like he has on Thursday nights.
Well, Nick picks his spots. And am I supposed to call him Nick? I know that some of the Alabama fans think you should call him Coach all the time, but you know, every time he calls me, he always says, "This is Nick." So, I mean, I figure I'm okay until he says something to me about it. But he will pick his spots. But no, he has a much better sense of humor, a much better wit about him than he shows a lot of times. Behind the scenes, he's really funny. He tells jokes. He'll even pick it himself sometimes. I'll give you an example. This has been several years ago. He says, you know, I'm still old fashioned, old school. I get that. He says, even though we've all got backup cameras in our cars now, he says, I still will turn to my left and sort of wait and see if there's anybody coming. He says, my kids all laugh at me, or if somebody's in the car with me, because I still do that. He says, but that's just what I'm used to doing. So, he will do that. And he likes it when, you'll see some of these people impersonate him, maybe not so much as players, but when people impersonate him from time to time with all the hand gesturing and all that kind of stuff, I think he sort of gets a kick out of that. I think I've had a chance to do a lot of fun stories with Nick over the years, and getting to talk to him and Miss Terry about him sitting at home last year during the Iron Bowl and watch that on television. I think he really enjoyed talking about that, eating Miss Terry's homemade chili on chili dogs, and her hearing him upstairs yelling at the television. I'd ask him about it, and he'd sort of laugh about it. But no, he's got a much better sense of humor. And I think anybody you talk to that's had a chance to be around him and spend some time with him, we'll hear that. We'll hear that side of him. I was kidding him one time. He was talking about swimming in the pool with his granddaughter, Amelie. And I said, well, what do you do? He said, well, she's got one of these rubber ducks. And I get up on a rubber duck, and I look at him. I'm like, Nick, can we get pictures of that? And he laughs. And he says, you'll have to talk to Miss Terry about that.
It's really, really good. Well, he's got a football team that's off to a 4-0 start this season and just had a sharp win against Southern Miss on Saturday. Just what are your early impressions when you watch Alabama? It was certainly an impressive win as well 2 weeks ago in the Swamp.
Well, I know he was much more pleased with their ability to play 4 quarters last week than he has to this point, even though they beat Miami soundly and, sort of squeaked out that win in a tough environment for Florida. See, I don't know, there's a lot of teams that could have won there in that environment. Alabama was one of them. But I know, you guys know Nick. I mean, he wants to play a complete game, whether he's playing Westchester State High School or Georgia or Florida, anybody else in the SEC. That's he talks about the inner scoreboard and outer scoreboard. He's much more concerned with what the inner scoreboard says at the end of a football game. I do believe that they've still got a ways to go offensively. I know that sounds crazy with some of the points they're scoring, but they still up front offensively, and the offensive line. I think that's a work in progress. I'll tell you this: the guy they got coaching that offensive line, Doug Marrone, is as good a football coach as you're going to find. It's not every day you find a staff that has 2 former NFL head coaches on it, Doug Marrone and Bill O'Brien. And I think those guys, with their background and their history, the fact that they've done it and can share ideas and at some points even challenge Coach Saban, with some things that they feel like they need to do. I mean, Saban likes that kind of thing. He wants new ideas. He wants, not to be undermined. I don't mean that, but to be challenged on some things. So I do think they've got a ways to grow on offense, and I think they will grow. I mean, Bryce Young's only a freshman. He didn't play hardly any meaningful snaps last year, if any. And even when he did play, remember, there were hardly any fans in the stands. So you got to get used to that as a freshman quarterback. But boy, he can really throw it. He's athletic, and I think with more reps and more time, he's going to be a lot better. Defensively, they've made some mistakes at times this year. I think Florida's ability to run the football against them 2 weeks ago is concerning. Will they find other teams, potentially Ole Miss this year, because of all the talk about Lane throwing the football around, his teams have always been able to run the ball. And I think that's something to watch in this game is how does Alabama stop Ole Miss's ability to run the football? And Ole Miss is a little bit different than most teams because they'll spread you out. They'll do different things. Lane's so unpredictable with his play calling, and then they'll sort of hit you in the mouth running the football. So I think that's a big component of this game. But no, they're still really good, very talented, very well coached. I think, though, the thing we all got to remember is how many guys did they lose on that team last year that are not only playing right now in the NFL, but starting in the NFL? I count about 6 guys. Even when you're as good at developing players as Alabama is, and even when you recruit at the level that they do, when you lose that many players on one team, that many elite players, it takes a while to get back to even close to that point.
Then looking at Alabama's opponent on Saturday, the Ole Miss Rebels, obviously last year in the Alabama-Ole Miss game, we saw that Ole Miss can score and get in a shootout type game with Alabama. But what has Lane Kiffin done to improve this football team, especially on the defensive side of the ball, helping their 3-0 start?
Well, I think the first thing is DJ Dirk and his defensive coordinators are a really good coach, and understood last year it was going to be a tough sledding for them. They just didn't have the players, especially in a COVID year, where you didn't have spring practice. He was a first-year coordinator, and let's be honest, they were awful on defense last year. They've gotten better. I still don't think they're a top-tier SEC defense. They do have some new faces, some guys I think that have helped them, that type of thing. But they will have a tough time slowing down Alabama. I really believe that. And I think Ole Miss is going to win this game. They're going to have to score 40, 45 plus again. And, well, heck, they scored 48 last year and didn't win. Now, has Ole Miss improved enough to where they can keep Alabama from scoring 60 or 50 and maybe win a 41-40 game or 41-38, 45-41? Potentially. But I'll tell you this, Ole Miss is really good on offense. Lane is one of the best play callers in college football, and he's got a quarterback in Matt Corral, who I think will torch a lot of teams this year. I think it's going to be a good football game. I think it's a game that will get into the second half, certainly. And it probably is going to get down to, can Ole Miss make enough stops on offense to have a chance to be in the game those last 5, 6, 7 minutes? And I'm not sure they can, because I think for all of what Alabama has done on offense and the way they've transformed over the last 6, 7, 8 years, they still have the ability to run the football and bloody your nose. And that's what I'm not sure that Ole Miss will be able to stop in this game.
Chris, you've covered Nick Saban for many years at different stops, and you've covered Lane Kiffin many years and at different stops, even going back to Tennessee in 2009. How has Lane changed the most from 2009? In what ways is he still similar to the guy that was in Knoxville before?
Well, he's still a bit of the knucklehead off the field, and some of the things he says and tweets, and he will admit that. He always says, "Who says you can't win and have fun at the same time?" And he's just Lane. I think everybody that's been around him or has played with him or played under him or coached with him will tell you that. So I think his propensity to play loose and have fun and do those things and tweet, come on, he tweets things that no other coach would ever tweet. Let's be honest. I don't think he's ever going to change. That's him. He's real. He's genuine. He doesn't pretend to be anybody else other than who he is. I do think he's matured, though, and he will tell you this. The invaluable part of working for Nick Saban was learning his structure, the way he runs practices, the way he runs his program. And if you go watch Ole Miss practice and spend a day there, it looks a lot like it does at Alabama. Everything's fast, the tempo. There's a purpose to everything you do. He holds his coaches accountable. They don't waste a lot of time. They practice hard. It really does. And he'll tell you that's Nick Saban. So he's had the benefit of coaching under Pete Carroll and Nick Saban. And I think he's been able to combine those two systems, those two approaches, and it's made him a more mature and better head football coach. Coach Saban told me last week when I was with him that he felt like that Lane would always be a better head coach than he was an assistant coach, because when you're a head coach, you bring all these people in, they do a lot of the organizing. They're the ones that sort of put all the things together. And he says, I think that's where Lane's strength is calling plays, creating mismatches on offense, doing all the things it takes to lead up to the game, but letting all the other people under him do most of the organization.
Chris, we're really looking forward to Alabama against Ole Miss coming up on Saturday. And before we let you go, wanted to talk about More Than a Voice on the SEC Network. You had a chance to be part of that documentary produced by Kenny Chesney, talking about the iconic SEC radio broadcasters throughout the years. Just how much did you enjoy getting to be part of that film and share some stories about some really legendary announcers like Larry Munson and John Ward?
I've been in this business 35, 36 years. That's probably one of the most fun things I've ever done. And one of the things that I, as I got into it and they talked to me, and certainly now that I've had a chance to see the film, it's great for a kid growing up in the 70s, in the early 80s. It's just hard to explain to people that are a lot younger just what radio meant to college football fans. It was college football. Listen to John Ward, John Forney, and Larry Munson and Jack Crystal. Those guys were what brought these players to life for us. And as a kid who played sports and had dreams of getting into sports media, you listen to those guys, and I can remember taping at night some Larry Munson broadcasts and some John Ward broadcasts and going back and listening to them. I love that era of radio. It truly was the golden era of radio. And even basketball. Listen to Kaywood Ledford at night do Kentucky basketball because I could get the Louisville station, when the sun set. Those men all meant a lot to me and still do to this day. What their inspiration and sort of helping me realize what my dreams were and chasing those dreams. But I think I probably speak for all of us that are in the, over 50 club that grew up in that era. And talking about just what those men meant. Very few games were on television, Roger. I mean, very, very few games were. And you might have one on a Saturday in college football, a national game. And then you might get to see some highlights the next day if you lived in the area where the coach's show was on. If you lived in Birmingham or you were in Alabama, you got to see the Alabama highlights. If you lived in Tennessee, the Tennessee or Atlanta, Coach Dooley's highlights. But you just, when the game was live, it was going on, my vision of Herschel Walker, his freshman year was via Larry Munson, the big thighs and, running over people. I mean, I never saw Herschel Walker play live until the 8th game that season when they played South Carolina in an ABC nationally televised game. But I can promise you this, I felt like I knew everything about Herschel Walker, what kind of player he was, and how big and strong and fast he was, thanks to Larry Munson.
And now you know what a greensward is.
That's exactly right. I still got to go research that a little bit and figure out exactly what that is.
That was a great moment, showing again John Ward's impeccable vocabulary. That was really inspiration to all of us. But Chris, it's been a lot of fun getting your thoughts on Alabama, Ole Miss, getting ready for Saturday. We enjoyed having you in Tuscaloosa last week and hope to see you again. Thank you for joining us.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
What we touched on at the very end, More Than a Voice, it's an SEC Network documentary that, again, was produced by Kenny Chesney, looking at the iconic SEC radio broadcasters throughout the years, and Eli Gold was very prominently featured in that. And coming up on our Thursday edition of Crimson Drive, Eli will be along as he always is for a Hey Coach preview, but we'll definitely pick Eli's brain about how important it was for him to be mentioned there, what an honor it was for him to be mentioned in that documentary, and I certainly hope you can check it out, available online as well, I believe on demand on ESPN. But Chris was a part of it. Great to hear those stories at the very end of that interview as we look forward to Alabama against Ole Miss. Well, each and every week we're joined by an Alabama legend, and we have two of them that will be honored coming up on Saturday as honorary captains, Leroy Jordan as well as Bill Battle. They were teammates on the 1961 National Championship team, Coach Bryant's first national championship team that he coached here at the University of Alabama. Earlier in the summer, we had a chance to catch up with Bill Battle, who, of course, not only a great player, as we mentioned, will be honored coming up on Saturday, but was also an athletic director, a businessman, really an important figure in the history of Alabama athletics. So we figured it was a good time to relive that conversation with Coach Battle, talking about his new book that is out, also some memories from his playing days here at Alabama. You have a new book out called The Master's Plan, an autobiography as well as kind of a game plan for life, as it seems. What can you tell us about the book?
Yeah, interesting way the title came about. I never really wanted to be an athletic director, even when I was a coach. And Mary and I were living in a dream house in a dream neighborhood and thought we were there for the rest of our life. And I got a call on a Sunday night back in January of 13. And within a week, I had decided to become an athletic director and uproot our whole life. And so I stayed in Tuscaloosa after the press conference, and Mary went back to Atlanta to get our home ready to sell and figure out what all we needed to do, which was monumental and buy a house and all that. But it was a great experience. So 3 or 4 weeks into the process, I was in Tuscaloosa and Mary was in Atlanta. So I went home this particular weekend, and I was on the way back, the phone rang. then it was one of my assistant trainers from Tennessee, Leroy Mullins, called. Hadn't talked to him since he left. When he left to take the head job at Ole Miss under Billy Brewer, and then Steve Sloan came in. Leroy was a great guy and a great trainer, but he said, Coach, I'm so glad you'll be working with young people again. And I said, well, Leroy, that wasn't in my master plan. And he said, well, it was in the master's plan. And as I thought about that, and I thought there was some divine intervention in my coming back to Alabama, and particularly in some things that happened after that. And when I look back at people and the places, the people that I've met and were influenced by, and the places that I went that influenced what I did and how I did it, I didn't think that was by accident. I did believe there's a plan, and I do believe there's a plan. So that's what the theme of the book is, but it goes through and tells the various aspects of my life. It may be interesting to some. You know, I was 11 years in Tennessee, and of course I was played at Alabama and coached at Oklahoma and West Point and Tennessee, and then built the collegiate licensing company. And there are detailed analyses of all of those years, and back as athletic director at Alabama.
Well, let's go through some of the steps on the journey throughout the master's plan, starting with your playing days at the University of Alabama, playing for legendary head coach Paul Bear Bryant. What are some of the biggest lessons that he taught you while you were a player?
Well, Coach Bryant, I still think about him most every day. He had a great influence on my life, maybe more so than anybody other than my mother and father. And you know, I think the greatest lesson, and he was really good about applying football lessons to life lessons. And there were many that he did, but probably the greatest one was that, you know, when you're down, and in his vernacular, he said, when you're down, you lost your job, you're off, your wife ran away with a drummer, and things look bad, pick yourself up and go again, because you can make it. You've done it before and you can do it again. And so I think the answer is, and I think one of the reasons that competitive athletes are successful in business or law or medicine or whatever they try is that when the going gets tough, they don't flinch. They bear down and face the music and walk on through it. So I think that's the greatest lesson that he taught.
Of course, you had a quick rise throughout the coaching profession, becoming the head coach at the University of Tennessee, and that meant you had to go up against Alabama and coach against Coach Bryant. What was that experience like for you the first time?
Well, the first time is pretty good. I was lucky. The football gods were in our favor. They had 400 and something yards of offense, threw the ball up and down the field, but we intercepted 8 passes and beat them 24-0. The night before the game, we always hosted the official party from the visiting team at the University Club. So I was there, and the Alabama party came in, and Coach Bryant came in with a big smile on his face, and he came over and put his arm around me, and he said, I know you're going to sleep real well tonight. And I didn't sleep a wink, I don't think, but anyway, we did shut them out for the first time in over 100 games, I think. And so that was a great win. And I guess a monkey off my back, except the monkey climbed back on the next year because Coach Bryant went out to Southern Cal. He'd gotten beaten by us and Southern Cal pretty badly in Birmingham in 1970 and gone 6-5 in both 69 and 70. But he had a really good team coming, and so they upset Southern Cal on the West Coast with Johnny Musso and that team, and they went undefeated, I think, and won the SEC. And in the decade of the 70s, even after going 6-5 in 1970, Alabama and Coach Bryant won 8 Southeastern Conference championships and 3 national championships. So it wasn't that great a time to be the coach at Tennessee.
Certainly not. And that just goes to show how Coach Bryant was adaptable. And I'm sure even in your tenure as athletic director at Alabama, you saw Coach Saban during his time as head coach at Alabama change as well. Great leaders do that, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been an amazing experience for the whole University of Alabama, but especially for me to be able to work with and under Coach Bryant for 4 years and with Coach Saban for 4 years. Coach Saban has the same principles. There's a difference between good and great, and he's never satisfied with good. And, most people, when they win a championship, they'd want to sit back and relax a little bit. But both of those coaches wanted to win 2 more after they had just won 1. And they geared up the next day and went about their business in that way. And so it's amazing that Alabama had 2 coaches that were the best of their era.
Part of a really great conversation with Bill Battle, former director of athletics at Alabama and also former player, again, on the 1961 national championship team that'll be recognized as he and Leroy Jordan are the honorary captains coming up for Saturday's game between Alabama and Ole Miss. This is going to wrap up this Tuesday edition of Crimson Drive presented by Coca-Cola. We will be back coming up on Thursday at 2 p.m. Central for another edition of Crimson Drive presented by Coca-Cola. We'll have our Hey Coach preview with Eli Gold. Also, we've joined by the voice of the Ole Miss Rebels, David Kellum, should be a national media guest as well. Just a lot of coverage to help get you ready for what's coming up as Alabama takes on Ole Miss on Saturday. Special thanks to Chris Lowe for joining us, as well as Coach Battle from earlier in the summer. Thanks as well to our Facebook Live producer, Ethan Carabin, for putting all of this together. And thanks to all of you for watching another edition of Crimson Drive presented by Coca-Cola. For everybody with the Crimson Tide Sports Network, this is Roger Hoover saying have a great rest of the afternoon and roll Tide.